Hey folks, bit of a weird fun one today. We actually had a plastic pitcher break around the Tech Transfigurations house, and well, we put it through the dishwasher. We thought it was dishwasher safe. It was not. So the whole side apparently warped, will not fit the lid anymore, and because this is part of a Samsung smart fridge, well, it costs like $100 USD to replace. So today we're going to see if we can go through and fix it up. We're using my good old handy heat gun. I usually use this for soldering projects. When I need to melt things off a motherboard or something like that. But instead, we're going to see if we can push this back into shape and make it fit the mold again using the heat gun. So, while this isn't normal technology, I will say it's considered tech because it's part of a smart fridge. If you disagree with me, well, too bad, I made the video anyway. Anyway, what we're doing here is this heat gun is not the most expensive on the market, but it works well for me. It is two settings, so one for 400 degrees Fahrenheit, the other for around 850, 900 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm using it on the lower setting here because this kind of plastic is really easy to start melting and start warping. So overall, what I'm trying to do is heat the whole thing evenly first. Because if you heat just one area, you can sometimes cause cracks. It'll cause that one area to warp, the rest to stay solid. Overall, you want to have the whole thing heated as evenly as possible, at least to like a somewhat, maybe I'd say around 90 to 100 degrees temperature over the whole side that you're working on before trying to superheat that super area of the actual deformation. So now that I heat the thing over, the entire thing, you have to take my word on this, is actually quite warm. I'm starting to work the specific area where the deformation is. Now, I'm not going to make you watch this entire process here today because it was a long process of moving and molding and moving and molding. But overall, the process is just taking it, heating the small area where the deformation was, pushing out, and moving forward. So let's speed it up and see what's next. All right, so at this point, I am taking a silicone pot holder. Got them from IKEA, they're great, and trying to push it out to see how much progress we've made. Now, when I put the lid on, you can see the lid is not fully fitting, even though we have stretched out the plastic quite a bit. So obviously, we got a bit more work to do. Now here what I've decided to do is flip over the pitcher and prop up the hot air gun to evenly heat that whole side and then use gravity plus the silicone pot holder in order to push out the whole side. By doing this, I'm able to evenly apply pressure to the whole inside and push it out, whereas otherwise I might actually either burn my hands trying to pull it, or if I just push on one area, it'll just bubble out and actually create the whole thing an even worse warp. Obviously, we don't want that. So I found quite a bit of success in pushing out the side with the entire silicone pot holder. And at this point, we're actually getting close to the point where it's ready to test again. Now here, you can start to see that it's almost fitting. Yes, it still looks disgustingly warped on the side, trust me, I know. But at this point, we are just so close, we are almost there. So what we need to do here is we're actually going to be using that top lid as a mold. Because the plastic on the rubber bottom, or I should say the plastic bottom, is much, much easier to mold than that hard plastic on the lid, I can actually push down and use it almost like a mold around the plastic to get it into the right shape. So I'm starting to apply pressure down while holding the heat gun about an inch or so, a couple centimeters away, and applying even heat while pushing down. And by doing this, I should be able to snap it right onto the top. And, ooh, you hear that sound? That is the sound of it finally going in. And I'm obviously quite excited here. So, a little bit of looseness on the end. I'm going to apply a last little bit of heat to the end of this part where it's warped in slightly. I haven't worked too much in this area yet, but because it's much smaller, it's quite easy to fix. Same strategy, I'm using the heat gun along with the lid as a mold, a little bit of force propping that thing up, and Really working those muscles there, working those hand muscles. And we are on with that last little bit of a screech, squeak, whatever you want to call it, we are on. So I'm doing a bit of a heat sealing process around the corners, applying it around, making sure that it's fully locked in there. Now, it's still not the prettiest, as you'll see in a second, but so far at least it's going to fit. Now, at this point, let's take a look and see where we are right now. The lid is on, and the lid does seal. The opposite side obviously has almost a perfect seal. The end where we had a little bit of warping, slightly warped. And this part right here, it does seal surprisingly enough. It pops in. It even just has a little bit of visual issues. Give it 2 thumbs up. And even though it is technically done here, I'm gonna do a bit more work on it off screen to get it to a point where I'm happy with it to use it in my day-to-day. So I'll be right back. Now, if you look here, I've actually done a bit more work off screen. All around, the other sides are untouched, but this little dip that we had right here, I worked at it a little bit with the silicone grabbers to try to pull it down as much as possible and make it as uniform as possible. Obviously, the whole thing still fits inside and out. It's still completely usable. Obviously, I'm going to wash it first before I use it, this time not in the dishwasher, by hand. But, while not perfect, I'd say it's worth using to save the $100 to replace this thing. So, thanks so much for joining me for this today. Bit of a weird one, but I hope you enjoyed it. And it goes to show that just because something's broken doesn't mean you gotta throw it out. Thanks. See ya.